Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the space. Today's episode is going to be one of our last, if not the last, Q&A. I know I did a Q&A episode way early in the beginning. It's crazy to think that this podcast is a little over a month old. That is so cool. So I wanted to talk about one question that I got on one of my episodes that asked if I could speak about how to address asexual discussions or sexual discussions with your partner, your friends, or your family, or kind of navigate uncomfortable situations with someone who may want something in a relationship that you don't. Now, I want to preface that again, these are all my opinions. I share research with you guys, but I can only pull from my own experience in answering this question. To start, I would say that none of this is easy, and I have been having sexual conversations from an asexual perspective for many, many, many years because asexuality is a huge part of how I navigate my life, and I can't always promise that it gets easier. I would say, however, that as you have more conversations around sex as an asexual person with those you love and those who care about you, the more confident you become in yourself and in what you want for yourself and in how you feel. So let's break it down. We'll start with addressing asexuality with your friends, your family, your partner. Sex is a topic that, under a societal lens, has become pretty taboo while also being embraced. And I know I've mentioned that before, where there's a dichotomy between embracing sexuality but dismissing asexuality, which makes those conversations taboo or difficult or challenging. However, I want to push back against that notion and say that I have found that sexual conversations can be just like any other conversation. I have sometimes conversations about sex, like I have conversations about going to the grocery store. And that is certainly not to minimize the experience or to minimize someone's feelings around sex. But even from an asexual perspective, I talk about asexuality and talk about sex a lot. And I think that's important. I have found again that those conversations don't get easier, but I grow more confident because, in my own way, as an asexual person, I have broken down the taboo mentality of talking about sex, especially in talking about sex with those I love and talking about sex with my partner. That is something else important to remember. In making sexual conversations approachable and in making sex as a topic approachable, conversations are always ongoing. And here's what I mean by that. Within any type of encounter, whether asexual or sexual, there is always a negotiation and a collaboration between two or however many people about what sex and asexuality means to them. And that can often change. People learn different things, people feel different things, and so the conversation changes and grows and adapts. So I want to say that no conversation about sex and asexuality is ever going to be the same. Because I think, again, going against perhaps what society has dictated, sex is not a destination. Sex is part of the journey. I have no stake. I have no right to intrude in anybody's romantic or physical life. But if you are with someone who sees sex as a destination, that is your first of many red flags. Just putting that out there. And so, in talking about sex, that's also part of the journey. So, asexuality and sex is constantly overlapping, obviously, because we're all just trying to figure it out. You know, allosexual people and asexual people were just trying to figure it out. So, that is one point. If we can wrap it up and put a little bow on it, that is one point of confidence around navigating sexual discussions starts by having those conversations regularly from an allosexual perspective and from an asexual perspective. Another thing I would say about conversations you have about asexuality with those you love is that more than anything, trust yourself. Trust yourself to know how you want to approach the conversation, because sex and asexuality means very different things to different people. You may sit your family down and have a formal discussion about asexuality, what it means, what that experience is like, and stuff like that. Or you may mention it offhandedly in a comment one day, and that might be enough. You may treat it as a big deal, you may treat it as not that big of a deal. So trust yourself on the energy and time that you want to dictate to this topic, because not every conversation about asexuality needs to be super drawn out, super draining, a investment of your time. Again, I have found such a difference in my life when I treat asexual and sexual conversations like I'm buying groceries or like I'm taking out the trash. Because although it is a big part of my life, I think that in formalizing those conversations can often do us a little bit of a service and demystify, de-tabooize those conversations. If you guys get my meaning. Yeah, sticking home point. Talk about yourself in the way that makes you feel the most confident and in the way that you would like. So we have those two ideas. Let's move on to the second part of the question about how to get out of uncomfortable situations where someone else wants something you don't. Some of the hardest points in my life have been when people tell me that my asexuality is wrong, that my asexuality is not for them, that I'm making a mistake. Those are hard-hitting words and hard-hitting conversations that have left me feeling like a different person. And again, I want to jump back to that point that if those conversations ever arise, it's hard for them to get easier. But clarity does wonders. And so, no matter what the response, no matter what someone else may say to you, clarity in what you desire and clarity in your identity is one of the most beautiful gifts that you can give yourself. Even if the clarity of that is, I am changing, I am growing, I am fluid. Your confidence in yourself is strong enough to break down anybody who may put you down for your identity. So, for example, in my experience, I have received criticism on asking other people to change to be my partner. As an asexual person, it's like, well, how could you ask someone to give that up? And that has never been my priority. My priority has always been to find another asexual partner, Asking someone to ignore or to reject parts of themselves so that I will be happy in a relationship is so toxic and so not the point. And so with that experience, I have found that it is so much easier to find, and this goes for people of all identities, it is so much easier to find someone who aligns with who you are and who you want to be, rather than ask someone to change to fit what you desire. And so if you're in a conversation with someone who obviously wants something that you don't, then it begs the question of, if that person is the person who you believe will help you grow into the person that you want to be, then it begs the question of whether or not that person is right for you. Relationship 101. If you are not okay with someone changing, they are not the one for you. Or if someone is not okay with who you are right now, as well as who you may be, that is not the person for you. Unconditional love says, I will love you no matter how you change, and I will love you no matter how you stay the same, because we're talking in totality here. Conditional love says, I love you until, I love you except. Now, obviously, there is the condition of murder and horrible things, but that is not what we are talking about. What we are talking about is identities and how important it is to find someone who loves you now and who will love you later. And honey, if that's not guaranteed, then there is a reason that uncomfortable situation or uncomfortable conversation is so uncomfortable. And yeah, so in that, I think the answer is 2 or 3 parted, you know? Demystifying and detabooizing sexual conversations, I have found, has given me confidence as an asexual person to engage in those conversations. Those conversations also need to be ongoing and ever changing and ever moving and saying, all right, what did we want then? What do we want now? What are we going to want? Stuff like that. As well as if someone is asking you to change and they have a hard time accepting who you are right now, then that person is not for you. A little bit of dating advice on that last one. All in all, don't be afraid to be who you are, and don't be afraid for that to be different every single time you ask yourself that question. And don't be afraid to talk about it too. That's why I'm here. Yay! I hope that helps to answer your guys' questions in terms of navigating, kind of the part 2 of navigating sexual discussions, especially when it can be uncomfortable. And I do not mean to say any of this to demean its importance or reduce your guys' experience. Stuff like this is tough. Learning and growing and changing is tough. And also being who you are, just in general, you know? But step by step, I think we can make it easier. And we don't have to do it alone. It is more often than not a team effort, which is one of the most beautiful and also some of the most challenging parts of life. So anyway, I hope that answered your questions. If you guys would like another Q&A, please drop a couple comments below if you have questions or feedback. And I love hearing from you guys. And I will see you next time here at The Space.